Morning, Mr. Mercer.
Hello.
At the end of 2008, you stopped working for Angel Valley, correct?
That's correct.
And you essentially worked 2 days for Angel Valley in 2009, correct?
That's correct.
And those were to construct a sweat lodge in about May 2009?
Yeah.
And then the sweat lodge for October 2009 for James Ray International, correct?
Yeah, I would,
That's a yes or no?
yes.
And you've already testified that you had no other job duties at Angel Valley in 2009, correct?
That's correct.
You were not the maintenance man in 2009?
No.
You were not the landscaper?
I was not the landscaper.
And basically for the remaining 270 some odd days at Angel Valley, you had no duties there, correct?
That's correct.
So you say that you got the tarps for both of the sweat lodges in 2009 from the pump house, correct?
That's correct.
But during the 270 other days of 2009, you have no personal knowledge how the tarps were stored, correct?
That's correct.
You were not on site, correct?
I was on the I was living on the property, and I was walking through there.
I appreciate that. So, but you don't know how these tarps were stored for the other 270 days, correct?
No, I don't.
There's no inventory of the blankets, correct?
No.
There's no inventory for the tarps?
No.
You don't have any sort of records or anything like that for these tarps, correct?
That's correct.
Now, each time you set up these tarps, they're set up in a different formation, correct?
Yeah.
And the only thing that's consistent is that big brown thing over the top, correct?
Yes.
And so every single time you set it up, the tarps could be one place or another place or another place, correct?
Sure.
Same with the blankets, correct?
Sure.
Now, you recognize some of the coverings, correct?
Yes.
So, for instance, the big brown thing, rubber thing, correct? Yes?
Yes.
And you also recognize a few of the blankets, correct?
Yes.
Some of them were sewn together.
That's correct.
So you'll recognize those, correct?
Yes.
But you also don't recognize a whole lot of the blankets, correct? Blanket's a blanket.
A blanket's a blanket is correct, but I've seen them before.
Okay, but there are some that you don't recognize, correct?
That could be true. Yes.
A moving blanket, a big blue moving blanket, looks like every other big blue moving blanket, correct?
That's right.
And with respect to the tarps, these blue tarps from Home Depot, you have no idea how to distinguish one tarp from another, correct?
No, they're blue.
They're all blue, right?
Blue and gray, or blue and brown.
So other than those few tarps and blankets that you do, well, strike that. Other than the big brown rubber thing and the few blankets that you do recognize, you can't say, you have no personal knowledge as to whether the coverings are exactly the same for every sweat lodge ceremony, correct?
I have no personal knowledge, but I think they are.
Okay, but move to strike. You have no personal knowledge.
No personal knowledge.
The motion to strike is granted as to what the witness thought.
Now, when you assembled the sweat lodge in 2009, you noticed that there were some new tarps that had been purchased?
Yeah, that's correct.
And so, for instance, those tarps for sure were not in any other sweat lodge ceremony, correct?
You would think so, yeah.
And you also have testified and told this jury that sometimes when you needed to go get tarps, you'd go to other places other than the pump house, correct?
That's true.
And that's because these tarps were used all over the property, correct?
Yes.
Sometimes they were used to cover wood, correct?
Yes.
Sometimes they were used for other purposes, correct?
That's correct.
And you have no idea, at least in 2009, when you were only working 2 days, what was being done with these tarps, correct?
That is correct.
Now, you have also told us, or you told me actually yesterday, that some of the blankets were used for other purposes, correct?
Yeah.
Sometimes they were taken out of the pump house and maybe laid down on the ground to sit on.
That's correct.
And so in 2009, for the 270 days you were not working for Angel Valley, you have no idea what those blankets were being used for, correct?
I have no idea.
You don't even know, for instance, whether or not the tarps and blankets were in the pump house in January of 2009, correct?
Personally, I didn't go in the pump house. No.
Correct. So you do not have personal knowledge whether the tarps and blankets were in the pump house in January 2009, correct?
That's correct.
You don't have personal knowledge whether they were in there February 2009, correct?
That's correct.
You don't have personal knowledge March 2009, correct?
Yes.
April 2009?
Yes.
And that's because you didn't go into the pump house for the entire year other than those 2 days in which you helped assemble the sweat lodges, correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. And you have no idea how those tarps and blankets were being stored in the pump house, correct?
Yes and no.
Okay, well, let me rephrase the question. In the 270 days that you were not working at Angel Valley and not walking into the pump house, you don't know what was going on in that pump house, did you?
No, I don't.
Okay, so you don't know, for instance, if somebody walked into the pump house on January 2nd and
I
did
wouldn't
something.
have any idea.
You would have no idea whatsoever, correct?
No.
Now, you have seen rat poison in the pump house, correct?
Yes.
So when you told this jury that they don't use chemicals at Angel Valley,
Your Honor, this goes
On the
is
scope,
beyond
but I
the
was going to address
foundation.
this
then
area.
I'll move on from that. You don't know, for instance, whether or not rat poison was used in the pump house, correct?
Your Honor, this goes beyond the scope.
Mr. Lee, sustain.
Okay. You do not know whether or not any additive was used to any of the coverings in the 270 days you were not in the pump house, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
You have no idea for those 270 days you were not in the pump house how these tarps and blankets were being maintained, correct?
Objection. Mr. Lee had an issue with the rubber covering. He has far exceeded that. He has entered into areas that the state has not yet had an opportunity to even examine the witness on, and now he's doing cross-examination.
And I'm going to allow an answer to that last question,
Thank you,
and you may answer that if you
Can
recall
you
the
repeat the
question.
question, please?
You have no idea in the 270 days you were not in the pump house what was being done to any of those tarps or blankets, correct?
That's correct.
You have no personal knowledge about that.
No.
And you have no personal knowledge about what was being done to the land in the 270 days that you were not working at Angel Valley, correct?
Yes and no.
You have no personal knowledge, correct?
I didn't work there, but I was walking through the property
You
every
did
day.
not have your eyes on that piece of land where the sweat lodge was for the 270 days you were not involved in making a sweat lodge, correct?
24 hours a day, no, I did not
Okay.
look at it.
So 24 hours a day you did not look at it, correct?
But I did look at the property
I
in
understand that.
2009 many times as I walked past it.
Okay, but you did not know everything that's happening on that
How
piece
could
of
I?
property.
No, I did not know.
Thank you.
Ms. Polk, you may continue.